Hello, thank you for joining Mrs. K again and Story Time. I do enjoy reading books, and I thought that today, the 26th of February, is the first meteorological spring day, apparently. So when I was in school today, I thought, well, I'm going to show my children a really old version of this, which is Wind in the Willows, The Wind in the Willows, because it's a kind of a book about seasons and animals that live on the riverbank and all that involves. And when we meet the characters right at the beginning, spring is springing, and it just made me think about Wind in the Willows. So I found this version, which is something called an abridged version. It's the original by Kenneth Grahame is a lot longer than this, but this is a bit shorter. But it's got all the fabulous characters in it, and some of them you might recognise. There's Badger, there's Moley, Ratty, and Toad. So I'm going to read a little bit of this and see how we get on. So, chapter 1, The Riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little home. There were splashes of whitewash all over his black fur, his back ached and his arms were tired. It was spring in the world outside. Mole could feel the fresh air and sunshine cooling him in the dark underground burrow. Suddenly, he threw his brush down. And look, there's a lovely little illustration of Mole. Just there. Bother, he said. Oh, blow, he said. Hang spring cleaning. He bolted out of the house and scrambled up the steep, narrow tunnel that was his front entrance. He had to scrape and scratch and scrabble with his little paws, muttering to himself, Up we go, up we go. At last, pop, his snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. This is fine. This is better than whitewashing, he said as he bounded joyfully across the meadow. Suddenly he came to the bank of a river. He'd never seen a river before. The water was full of life and movement, glints and gleams and sparkles. Mole trotted beside it, fascinated, until he was tired out. And there he is, sitting by the side of the river. He sat down on the grassy bank and listened to the sound of the water. As he looked at the opposite bank, he saw a dark hole. Something bright and small twinkled in it. It winked, and he saw it was an eye. Then a small face appeared. A brown little face with whiskers, small neat ears, and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. The animals stood and looked at each other. Hello, Mole, said the water rat. Hello, Rat, said the Mole. Would you like to come over? How can I get to you? Said Mole, not knowing the ways of the river. The rat stooped down and unfastened a rope. He hauled up a little blue and white boat just the size of the two animals. He rowed across and gave Mole his paw to step down timidly into it. And there's another lovely drawing of Ratty helping Mole into his lovely little boat. Two animals made friends at once. Ratty was very surprised to hear that Mole had never been in a boat before. There is nothing half so much worth doing, he told Mole, as simply messing about in boats. Then he had an idea. If you've really nothing else to do this morning, why don't we go down the river together and make a long day of it? Well, let's start at once, said Mole, settling back happily into the soft cushions. The rat fetched a wicker picnic basket. Shove that under your feet. What's inside? Asked Mole. There's cold chicken, said Rat. Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled onions, salad, French bread, crescent wedges, spotted meat, ginger beer, lemonade. Oh, stop, cried Mole in ecstasy. This is too much. Do you think so? Said Rat seriously. It's only what I always take on these little outings. Rat rowed silently down the river while Mole took in all the new sights, smells and sounds. The water rat enjoyed his friend's pleasure and explained the love of the river. It's my world and I don't want any other. But isn't it a bit dull at times? Asked Mole. Just you and the river and nobody else? Nobody else? You must be joking. It's full of people, too many of them sometimes. Otters, moorhens, ducks and so on all day long. What lies over there? Asked Mole, waving a paw towards a dark background of woodland beyond the fields. Oh, that's the wildwood. We don't go there much, we riverbankers. Aren't they very nice people in there? Asked Mole nervously. Well, the squirrels are all right. The rabbits are a mixed lot and badgers all right, but there are others, weasels and stoats and foxes and so on, all right in a way, but you can't trust them. And beyond the wildwood, where it's all blue and dim and there's hills and something like the smoke from towns, beyond the wildwood comes the wide world, said the rat, and that's something that doesn't matter to you or me. So Rat and Mole began their picnic. While they were eating, they met two of Rat's friends. One was the otter swimming underwater to catch fish. He climbed out on the bank, shook himself, and had a word with them. Drops of water glistened on his whiskers. The other was Mr. Badger, whose stripy head suddenly pushed through the thorny hedge. He grunted, company, and disappeared. Mr. Toad was on the riverbank too. He shot past in a brand new racing skiff. Can you see? There's Mr. Otter, there's Moley and Ratty, Badger's in the hedge, and there's Mr. Toad in his brand new boat. Mr. Toad was short and fat, splashing badly and rolling from side to side. He'll never do well in a boat, said Rat. Not steady enough, said Otter, and suddenly vanished after a fish. Toad's always trying something new, explained Rat. Last year he had a houseboat, but he soon gets tired of things. Rat and Mole went back to Rat's snug home in the riverbank and sat in armchairs beside a bright fire, chatting. Rat invited Mole to stay with him for the rest of the summer. The happy Mole went to sleep in a comfy bedroom. His newly found friend, the river, was lapping against the bank below his windowsill, and he could hear the wind whispering in the willows. So we've learned about Ratty, Moley, we've met Mr. Badger, although very briefly. We've met Mr. Otter, who was catching fish, and we know that Toad is a very impatient person who gets bored very quickly and trying new things all the time. He's my favourite character, actually. So we'll learn more about Ratty, Moley and the crew. That was chapter 1, Wind in the Willows. Until chapter 2. Bye-bye.